10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 288. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 288 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us yet again for another episode. It is the third episode of the month, and you know what that means. It is time for our Lick of the Month. And this month we're going to take a look at one of my favorite solos in recent memory, but we'll get to that in a second. If you are new to the show or didn't know, we are a listener-supported podcast, which means we do not have any advertisements on the show, nothing to distract from the jazz education. And the way that you can support us directly is through the website Patreon. This is a great way to support the creators that you love. And when you do decide to support us, you get a PDF with every single episode, along with audio excerpts and all the things that are going to get the most out of these episodes after you're done listening to them so you can go and work on them. In order to support us, please go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today, and you get instant access to all the materials from every single episode that we have ever done. Wanted to give a quick shout out to some new patrons this week. Thank you to our new $5 patron, Maria. Thank you to our new $3 patrons, Core and Chris. And thank you to Hans for editing your pledge from $3 to $5. Welcome to the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson family, and of course to the over 350 members we have over there. Thank you so much for keeping this show going. So again, that's 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up for instant access. All right, so we're going to take a break from our scales for a quick second this week, and we are going to look at this amazing Patrick Bartley solo over the tune After You've Gone. So if you don't know who Patrick Bartley is, he is one of the most killing young alto saxophone players on the scene today. And this solo is actually transcribed from a great web series that I'm sure so many of you out there are familiar with, live from Emmett's Place, with the fantastic and marvelous pianist Emmett Cohen hosting a different band at his place in New York every single week. And if you're not tuned into that series, you need to get on it today. It is some of the best music coming out of anywhere currently. And I think he broadcasts these series weekly, and they are free. So definitely check them out. You can find him on Facebook. Just search for Emmett Cohen, live from Emmett's Place, and you'll be able to find that no problem. And I've got to give a shout out to a bunch of my college students that have been absolutely obsessed with this solo. They turned me on to it, and it is truly a masterpiece of soloing. So After You've Gone, if you're not familiar with that jazz standard, you should look that up first and foremost, understand the melody, look at the chord changes, all that good stuff. And one of the things that I love about this recording of it is that typically After You've Gone is played at a nice medium tempo or even more in a ballad direction. But on this particular video, they play it very, very up-tempo. And I love it. I love the way it sounds at that tempo. And Patrick just goes off on this particular solo. There are so many transcriptions popping up on YouTube of this particular solo. So if you want to see the whole thing, just search Patrick Bartley After You've Gone. You'll be able to find a transcription of the entire thing. We're going to pull a couple of excerpts that I think are going to be really valuable for you. We're going to pull the same section out of two choruses of the solo, and we're going to look at how they're different and how they're similar. And we're going to look at one particular chord substitution that he uses that I think is going to benefit you guys a lot. So we're going to take a look at two instances of the end of the A section of After You've Gone. So if you're looking at the form and the chords of this tune, it is going to be measures 13 through the end of measure 16 is where this excerpt comes from. So it's a concert B flat major 7 chord to a concert B flat 7 chord, and then that is going to E flat. So we're dealing with a chord progression that is modulating from the key of B flat major to the key of E flat major, and he handles it so well. And there's one particular device that he's using in both instances of this particular part of the chord progression that I want to sort of zoom in on. So let's check out the first instance, the first lick that I have transcribed from this solo, and then we'll talk about what is happening in this section. Here's the lick. 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, a 1, 2, 3, 4. So many cool things going on in that lick. Let's go through it and talk about some of the things that stand out. So the first thing I want you to notice is that for the first measure, he's just using the triad, just using a B flat concert triad, nothing outside of that. And he's really just outlining it up and down. So that's an example of something really interesting you can do only using 3 notes, which I think is fantastic. So then in the second measure, he starts to develop this idea. What he does is he goes up to the minor triad based off of the 2. Then he continues up in register, developing it a little bit with some rhythmic interest using a triplet. Then in bar 3, again, we go back to just that pure B-flat concert triad. Then we have some chromaticism there as well. We see him going down from the root, down to the major 7, down to the 6, and then landing on that dominant 7. And then in the 4th bar, we have the device that he's going to use in both of these licks. He's using an augmented triad. So the 5th gets raised, and again, he's just kind of using that B-flat triad, but now with a sharp 5. And that is the sound that really gives us that gravity going into that concert E-flat chord in measure 5, where he ultimately resolves the line. So 2 things I want you to take from this first lick. The way he makes just a pure major triad sound as interesting as he does. And he uses it by being totally comfortable with that triad, changing directions, and making it just very, very exciting. He also plays this at a much faster tempo than what I have demonstrated it as. So that is going to increase the excitement even more. And then the second thing I want you to take away from this is using that augmented 5 chord, that augmented B-flat 7 chord to push us into the 4 chord, the key change, the E-flat major, the new 1 chord. Now, a quick note about that augmented 5 chord. The tune after you've gone is a little bit more of a trad jazz tune in my mind. Typically gets called when you're playing more trad tunes. In that style of music, the augmented 5 chord, the sharp 5 dominant chord, is super important, such an important sound. You'll hear a lot of the musicians from that time period, like the 1920s through the 1940s, use that sharp 5 chord all the time. And Patrick Bartley is doing a masterful job of kind of harkening back to that era and using that sound in his solo to create that gravity going into the 1 chord. There really simply isn't another sound like it. It's so unique and recognizable, and it is one of my favorite devices to use on a 5 chord. And again, Patrick Bartley is just using it to such a masterful effect. All right, so now we are going to skip ahead 1 chorus, and we are going to hear what he plays over the same chord progression. So here is lick number 2. 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, a 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is one of my favorite excerpts from the entire solo. I think what he's doing here is just awesome. So what we see in the first measure is a little bit more complicated than what we saw in the first measure of the last one. Still being very simple with what he's doing, but now we do see on beat 2 a chromatic approach tone to the third, and then we see him use a little bit more of the major pentatonic scale in the second half of that. Now, in the second measure of this particular lick, he's doing something really, really cool. He's moving from an E flat major triad to an E diminished triad. So this is like 4 to sharp 4 diminished that we hear in the blues. He's sort of superimposing that particular chord progression over the second bar. And then over the third bar, we see him go back to that major pentatonic sound in the key of B flat. And then again in the fourth measure, we hear him use that sharp 5 dominant chord to great effect, even cooler effect this time, because he extends the range and he's playing that augmented triad through almost 2 entire octaves, starting really, really high in the alto register on an altissimo G, and playing down, straight down that triad, and then again resolving to the third over the new 1 chord. The second lick, I think, in the last measure, that fourth measure, has a lot more gravity than the first one, simply because of that extended range and how simply he's playing just the triad twice. So now that we've talked about both of these licks, let's hear them back to back and see how they compare with each other. Here's the first lick followed by the second one. 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, a 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can hear there's a lot of similarities going on there, but there are also some really important differences. So again, the two things I want you to take away from this are how simple the first bars are in both instances, where he's basically just using either a regular old major triad or he's using a major pentatonic. And then I also want you to notice the fourth bar of both of those lines, how effective that augmented 5 chord is, and try to start working that into your solos, especially over a more traditional jazz standard, as After You've Gone happens to be. So let me know if you have any questions. Remember, you can grab the PDFs by going to 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, and you can get this lick in the key of all instruments: concert, E flat, B flat, and bass clef. And you can also get those licks extracted from the episode and on their own. Thank you to everybody that's supporting us over there. Please send me any questions you have, either on the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group. We've had some great discussions this week, or you can always email me at 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. Hope you're all doing well out there, staying safe and healthy as always, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend. We will see you next week with our Tune of the Month episode. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.